Hello, welcome back to the Light Paper, April 2021 edition. We are now on page 7 of the Light Paper, and this is episode 10 of this month's series. Oh, I apologise, sorry, episode 9. Episode 9 of this month's series. Okay, so this episode is going to be entitled, Is the UN's Relationship Education Sexualising Young Children? And it's written by Joan Ginsberg. As part of their Agenda 2030, the UN, in conjunction with the WHO and UNESCO, have been ushering in a revised form of sex education in schools across the world. So far, over 50 countries have been enrolled. Its introduction has sparked heated controversy in many countries, but to date, not one country has been able to halt it. The mission statements in the various documents that these associations have produced appear to be benign in their intent on first reading: to reduce STIs, together with teenage pregnancies, and promote sexual health and well-being whilst championing gender equality and children's rights. Most parents would have no argument against such aims. So why the vociferous opposition? Are those protesting narrow-minded bigots and Puritans, or do they have legitimate concerns? In order to decide, we firstly need to establish what is meant by the word sexuality. According to the WHO, sexuality starts at birth and is a central aspect of being human and encompasses sex, gender identities, sexual orientation, eroticism, pleasure and intimacy. And in last position comes reproduction. Whilst the UNESCO and UN literature provide guidelines for children from the age of 5 and above, the WHO guidelines begin at age 0 to 3. All literature on sex education, whether at an international level or local government one, stresses the need for material to be age/development appropriate. With this in mind, let's skip to the syllabus matrix of the WHO's document. One topic for 0 to 4-year-old children is enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, childhood masturbation. Another is the right to explore gender identities. In the 4 to 6-year-old bracket, we see the need for information to be provided on friendship and love towards people of the same sex, together with this ethically and linguistically dubious recommendation from another table: if the experience or feeling is not good, you do not always have to comply. Is this clarified or muddied further by the insertion of another point of information for the same age group, bearing in mind this is 4 to 6-year-olds, which states, some people pretend to be good, but they might be violent? Could we be forgiven for thinking that children are being encouraged to use tenderness and pleasure as a thermometer for what does or does not constitute bodily violation? The same children who have been encouraged to explore their own genitalia in a pleasurable way from birth? Could the emphasis on pleasure from a young age become a barrier to disclosure of sexual abuse in the future? Perhaps none of us have the answer. Another important area for consideration is the type of resources that are being used to implement this curriculum and the motivations of those charities and organisations involved in delivering them. Some of them are heavily involved in gender reassignation. Indeed, the BBC itself has various videos on transgender journeys undertaken by teenagers in its educational pages. In one BBC video aimed at and involving pre-pubescent children, they are expertly informed that there are 100 genders in existence. It strikes me that we all need to question the wisdom of presenting children with highly confusing and possibly damaging concepts at such an age. Some resource videos contain graphic references to bondage and sex, facial ejaculation, and some sexual practices that many of us might never have encountered before. Lastly, it is time to consider some of the experts involved with advising the UN on their sexual agenda. Some of them came from the Kinsey Institute, which has gained global recognition in good and bad ways. Its founder, Alfred Kinsey, felt himself to be a victim of paternal and religious suppression. His aim was to release society from its sexual guilt. Some would argue that he always remained a victim, given his masochistic sexual practices. In his book on male sexuality, published in the late 1940s, he included tables which correlated data that he had acquired from the observations of practicing paedophiles. The perpetrators were referred to as partners, and the tables logged the duration of the children's stimulation by the adult, and the length of time it took for children to reach an orgasm, and the frequency of the orgasms. The ages of the children were between 2 months and adolescence. One 4-year-old was observed over a 24-hour period. The use of the word orgasm was obviously a subjective one on the part of the observer, which is one of many reasons to discredit the science of such data. Kinsey once said, "It is difficult to understand why a child, except for its cultural conditioning, should be disturbed at having its genitalia touched." Another observation of his brings us back full circle to the WHO's definition of sexuality. We are all sexual beings from birth. We all look at a baby and recognise its aura of complete innocence. Could it be that Kinsey, in his zeal to release society from sexual guilt and repression, actually threw the baby out with the bathwater by sacrificing childhood innocence in the name of pseudoscience? And could it be that this worldwide roll out of dubious and explicit sexual education, spearheaded by the UN, is doing the same thing? If the nature of a curriculum and the resources used to teach it are such that we normally have to refrain from discussing them within earshot of young children, then the answer is probably a resounding yes. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that or were edified by it. Please remember to like, share, subscribe if so, and take care until next time. Bye bye.